Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. This is Integrated Literature, and in this episode, I will be discussing ecocriticism. Now, as usual, I will begin with the etymology of the theory. Now, ecocriticism is known by many names. It is known as green cultural studies or environmental criticism, ecopoetics, compost-structuralist, in order to more keenly distinguish its theories from post-structuralism. Joseph Mika called it literary ecology, which is the study of biological theories and relationships in literary works. One of the roots of ecocriticism is the romanticist pastoral genre, which views the survival of the simplicity, the peace, the harmony of nature, which is lost by a complex urban society, industrial revolution. For instance, in a novel by Adamu Kyuka Usman, The Death of Eternity, there's this issue of industrial waste, which terrorizes the rivers and the farms of the people, and even their games, the animals they hunt. So industrialization terrorizes nature. So pastoral genre views this survival of simplicity, which was lost by a complex urban society. The anthropocentric nature of religion is one of the things that led to ecocriticism, of course, which influenced the Enlightenment period. Interrogates Genesis 1, verse 26, which talks about man being a higher animal, man being above all animals, the cattle and the fowl of the air, the fish of the sea. So, anthropocentric nature of religion is one of the things that led to ecocriticism. Deep ecology. Deep ecology is a counter movement to what is called spoliation. Spoliation is the act of ruining or destroying something of the natural world. It maintains that solutions to spoliation deals with symptoms of spoliation rather than the root cause. So the solution to the natural destruction of the destruction of the natural environment lies in its symptoms, not the root cause. Deep ecology also resists the fact that different areas of nature perform a special function that is vital to our well-being. It argues for this. Microorganisms, the presence of microorganisms, for instance, will enable grass to yield. And when there is grass, herbivorous animals would be there. When there are herbivorous animals, there will be carnivorous animals. And this can also reverse. When there are no microorganisms, the grass wouldn't grow. If there are no grasses, herbivorous animals wouldn't be there. If there are no herbivorous animals, carnivorous animals wouldn't have somewhere to hunt. So this is the function that we perform to each other. Then ecocriticism tries to counter these long-standing, deeply rooted cultural traditions, which are humanistic and religious. When you go to some rural areas, especially in Africa, you will see a lot of deforestation without any replacement. Ecocriticism argues against something like this. Ecocriticism began existing in 1960s and 70s with the environmentalist movement. So it started in the US in 1980s and 1990s in the UK. So as a term, it arose in 1978 by somebody called Roweckart. It is referred to ecocriticism in the US and green studies in the UK. So there are some ideologies and philosophies that influenced ecocriticism. Ecocritics differ from formalists regarding text and the world. They also differ from postmodernists, whose ideology is that everything is socially or linguistically constructed. Ecocriticism or ecocritics are against these movements and ideologies. 18th century British Romanticism, mostly from Wordsworth, actually influenced eco-criticism. Also, 19th century American transcendentalists, people like Emerson in his book Nature, people like Margaret Fuller in her book Summer on the Lakes, and Thoreau in his famous book Walden. These people influenced the direction of eco-criticism through their works. So it is not surprising that eco-criticism first emerged in the US because Americans have been obsessed with the landscapes of the New World since European exploration of the continent began. Don't forget, Europeans invaded America, invaded the Red Indians, the Navajo, the Iroquois, the Cheyenne, and the rest of the tribes. So it's normal when you go to a place, to a new place, to be captivated by the scenery, the landscape. So this is one of the factors that led to eco-criticism. For instance, in Robinson Crusoe, of course, in his experiences, he said, after I saw barley grow there in a climate which I know was not proper for corn, I began to suggest that God had miraculously caused this grain to grow without any help of seed sown. This is Crusoe when he's trying to get acquainted with the island that he is that his ship wrecked him over. So during the Enlightenment, nature was defined as chaotic, unruly, unpredictable. That is something that is in need of being contained, improved, and corrected by civilization. Later, as against romantic emancipation of nature, romanticists talk about the emancipation of nature, that nature is not unruly, unpredictable. It is something that is incidental with human nature. So while Immanuel Kant saw beauty as an intrinsic value of nature, as an innate value of nature, Hegel saw this beauty in nature as merely an imperfect expression of beauty in art. He saw it as a simulation of beauty in art, that nature downgrades beauty. That's for Hegel. He thought that nature downgrades beauty, while Kant saw beauty as an intrinsic part of nature. So arguments and philosophies like this influence eco-criticism. So the term itself, the theory itself, is under-theorized because it lacks the precise instrument to produce reliable theories on the historically, politically, and socially changeable relationship between culture and nature, or between various cultures and their respective notions of culture, or their notions of other people's culture. Or when we go back to the book, The Death of Eternity by Adamu Kuka, we see the Hungarian Tibor who comes to Africa to spread the gospel. His gospel is the gospel of eco-criticism, ecosystem, the protection of the environment. All right, now let's plunge into the main concerns of the theory, the themes of the theory. I divided the themes into 5 categories. First, eco-criticism looks at the relationship between literature and biological and physical environment with an awareness of the damage wrought by human activities. So it answers this question of posthuman. Michel de Montaigne gave this example. He ridiculed the pretensions of humans' superiority over other animals. He said, "When I play with my cat, who knows if I am not a pastime to her more than she is to me?" So sometimes when you play with your pet, are you the one playing with the pet, or is the pet playing with you? So animals too have a place in the universe. Louis Wesleyan argued that each person is a bipedal, mobile, and self-conscious community of living agents because of the organisms that are within us. We share an inner sea. These organisms share an inner ocean that is bound by the surface of the organ of the skin and given firm shape by bones. So even within us, even inside us, we have a lot of microorganisms. A very good instance is the sperm. all right, or the eggs in a woman. These are microorganisms. Okay, not to talk about other germs, red blood cells, white blood cells, and the rest. So we have a community inside us. There's this movie, was it something osmosis? Was it osmosis Moses, whereby the action of the animation centers on the microorganisms in the body of the actor of one of the characters. Merleau Ponty called for a reawakening to the world around us that requires listening to the other voices that we have forgotten to hear, voices that arise in what we may have formerly assumed to be silences. For instance, in Robinson Crusoe, when he first discovers whale, when he first comes across whales, he said, we saw a vast, great creatures. We knew not what to call them, of many sorts, and they made such hideous howlings and yellings that I never indeed heard the like. This is the concern of ecocriticism. This is the concern of ecocriticism, to hear the silent voices of animals, of trees, of ocean, and the rest. So the study of literature and environment form an interdisciplinary point of view where all sciences come together to brainstorm solutions for contemporary situations. Ecocriticism deals with binaries such as man versus nature or culture versus nature. Human experience or its depiction of the natural environment is not a replication of this experience, of that human experience, but it is mediated by the culture of a particular time and place. So the representation of human natural environment or human experience is not actually a mirror of it, but it is something that is controlled by the culture of a particular people. So if I am to write a novel that is about the ecosystem, that doesn't mean that what I write is a universal truth. My culture, my ideology has mediated my representation of nature. So eco-criticism tries to reevaluate mimesis due to its coherence to environmental responses as against modernist assumptions of art as autonomous. That is what modernists think of art. Eco-criticism is saying no, art has to cohere with the environment. Eco-criticism is not a celebration of the pastoral or the romanticist sublime, nor is it a travelogue or an inspirational address. The fact that it talks about nature doesn't mean that this is something simply poetic. So there is the tendency for eco-criticism from the American school of thought to be celebratory, while from the UK school of thought, which is green studies, eco-criticism might be more minatory, which means it warns of environmental threats emanating from human activities. American school is celebratory. UK school is warning. So the perspective of eco-criticism tries to raise the reader's awareness of the non-human world. In eco-criticism, nature is not synonymous with environment. They are two different things. It encourages resistance rather than conservation. This is the difference between eco-criticism and perhaps romanticism. Eco-criticism encourages resistance against human activities, against nature, rather than conservation of nature. So, finally, under this point, eco-criticism has broadened its early limitation of scope. Its early limitation of scope focused on nature writing and wilderness, but now it focuses on multiple natural and built environments to writers with other ethnic, national, or racial affiliations. Second point is nature versus culture or anthropocentrism. The rejection of nature being reduced to linguistic entity means that nature is not reducible to a concept which we conceive as part of our cultural practice, like medicinal. What do we consider to be medicinal? What do we consider to be herbs? Is it flowers or spinach or what? So nature is not something reducible to linguistic construct or cultural construct. Calling something nature and seeing it as simply given, as simply nature, is a way of avoiding the politics which has made it that way. It means that calling everything nature is something biased, is something subjective. So, if we are to broaden the word nature, nature also means social. Social equality is being naturalized. That is, it is disguised as nature and it is viewed as a God given situation and inescapable when actually it is the politics of power structure. So the problem of the real problem refers to the debate between the social and linguistic constructedness of reality. Cultural statements gesture towards an element of truth, but not passed off as literal truth. They are just elements of truth. Um, Peter Barry categorized the outdoor environment into four. He categorized them into areas. Area one is the wilderness, that is, the deserts, the oceans, the uninhabited continent. Area two is the scenic, picturesque, sublime. Areas like the forests, lakes, mountains, cliffs, waterfalls, etc. Area three is the countryside, which is comprised of hills, fields, and woods. Area 4 is the domestic picturesque. This is a kind of man made environment like parks, gardens, and lanes. So he said that Area 3 and 4 center upon the relationships among humans, while Area 1 and 2 center upon the relationship between humans and cosmic forces and the Promethean narratives that show the limit of human scope. When we talk about Prometheus, the titan who stole fire and from the gods and gave it to humans. You see, this is a narrative that is beyond the human scope, so it shows the limit of the human scope. So it is senseless to ignore the dichotomy between gender, race, and class in rectifying or avoiding environmental catastrophe. These factors, these elements are vital in rectifying or avoiding environmental catastrophe. How do blacks deal with the environment? How do the whites deal with the environment? How do the poor people deal with the environment? And how do the higher class deal with the environment? How do women interact with the environment? And how do men? So these factors are vital in rectifying the environmental catastrophe. Point number 3 is metaphor. Ecocriticism deals with metaphoric language. John Ruskin coined the term pathetic fallacy in 1856 to show our tendency to see our emotions reflected in nature or environment. Still, when we go back to Robinson Crusoe, he makes a statement. He says that, I was not so much surprised with the lightning as I was with a thought which darted into my mind as swift as the lightning itself. He said, oh, my powder, my very heart sung within me. So Crusoe is likening the bolt of thought that comes to his mind with the bolt of lightning. This is a metaphoric language in eco-criticism. There's also something called commodification. Human interactions with other humans, so that places, objects, commodities are merely props. This is what commodification shows, that how humans interact with other humans. Are the places or objects or commodities considered important, or are they merely props, just a background, which provides the background against which human drama is featured? For instance, theatrical performance, you have a prop behind the stage. So do we take that prop as merely a prop, or is it vital in the drama? Is setting vital in a work of art, or is it just merely for the coloration of the environment? All right, so eco-criticism interrogates and answers questions like this. There's also something called the Anthropocene. Learning just a little about rocks and stones, for instance, shows us that that is the only constant thing about them. They may look and feel like an unfeeling permanence, as if they don't have feelings and as if they are permanent. But all of them bear the marks of, for instance, weathering, and they pass from state to state, from liquid to solid, from animate to inanimate. They sink, they shift, they rise. If, for instance, the leaf of a tree falls, it is no longer animated, it is now inanimate. So nature changes. Nature is not permanent. Point number 4 is called animism. Ecocriticism has a growing interest in animistic religions and the so-called primitive cultures that lack Western opposition between humanity and nature. Some radical environmental critics maintain that ecological crisis can be resolved only by the rejection of the Judeo-Christian religion by adopting an ecocentric religion, which we now go back to Genesis 1 verse 26. So this point is very short. Point number 5, which should be the last point, I think. Yeah, point number 5 is the last point. Eco-romanticism. The central view in romantic literature was human transcendence over nature, of course. However, innovative romantic literature, which is ecocriticism, argues that the root of modern human malady is its separation or alienation from nature, and the cure lies in its reunion. Peter Barry coined a term called hyperobjects. Hyperobjects are things that are massively distributed in time and space relative to humans. Things that are so vast that we will never be able to witness them fully, like black holes, or global warming, or the universe, or the Milky Way galaxy. So these hyperobjects are also looked at in ecocritical literature. The Australian philosopher Glenn Albrecht in 2005 coined a term called solastalgia. It is a clipping of nostalgia and solace. It is a sense of psychic distress that is caused by the same environmental change, the same environment, but when it goes through change. It is a feeling of emotional or existential distress that is caused by environmental change. So it is a homesickness we feel while still at home. The pain and longing people feel when they realize that the world around them is changing. A negatively perceived environmental change. This is linked to what is called eco-anxiety. It is a negative perception of the environment that is linked to what may happen in the future. So eco-anxiety deals with the future, solastalgia deals with the present. For instance, in Helen Habila's Measuring Time, which is the title of the book, during Marmo's loneliness with the closure of the school he is teaching, he waits for something, anything to happen. As he waited, he measures time in the shadows cast by trees and walls. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months pass to form the end of the rainy season in October. This is an example of solastalgia in Helen Habila's Measuring Time. So we now go to the poetics, the interpretive strategy of the theory. It is called green reading. Sometimes it is called green reading. The analysis of the implications of any text for environmental concerns in order to elevate the status of hitherto undervalued forms of nature writing. So ecocriticism uses the ideas of energy, entropy, symbiosis to criticize a text. So first interpretive strategy is to look at the representation of nature, how stereotypes distort reality, and where nature is absent or simply ignored. The effort to rediscover and reconsider the genre of nature writing, which had fallen into neglect, is what this point is talking about. Is nature represented in a distorted way, or is it not represented at all? This is the concern of ecocriticism, to deal with the representation of nature that is represented, or to tell us why nature is not represented in the text. So, turning criticism inside out, adding a different perspective to canonical works which are not about nature, like metaphorical expressions of nature, like flow, erode, high, lush, bushy, etc. That's the first strategy, or one of the strategies. Second, drawing upon science, history, philosophy to discuss anthropomorphism, the relationship between nature and culture is one of the concerns or strategies of interpreting text from the ecocritical perspectives. One looks at the evidence of incorporation of conceived ecological thinking, like the idea of growth. Number three, the ecocritical critic, asks whether nature influences the narrative or not, including other elements of the non-human, like animals. So it deals with identifying explicit ecological content. For instance, Animal Farm is an example of ecocritical text. So another strategy is ecofeminism, the analysis of feminine attributes on natural environment by male authors, as well as specifically feminine conceptions of the environment in the neglected nature writings by female authors. It's similar to the first strategy. So some eco critics seem to be nature endorsing, and some seem to be nature skeptical. The skeptics are concerned with the tendency to use nature to legitimize gender, sexual, and racial norms. So, as we said in the beginning, this theory is under theorized, so it doesn't have much interpretive strategies. However, there are some questions that one asks when he or she is analyzing a text based on ecocriticism. There are three questions. There are three categories of questions. First category is questioning the representation of nature. Does the setting of the text function simply as background, or does it play an active role in the narrative? That is one. How is nature affected by human beings, and how are humans affected by nature? Does the text raise the reader's awareness of the natural world? This is the first category. The second category is based on nature writing. Why is the text not widely known or not well known for its depiction of nature? How does this text qualify as belonging to the genre of nature writing? Does the work deal with environmental issues that are addressed in the study of history, philosophy, psychology, art, or ethics? This is the second category. Third category is ecocritical issues. Are the values expressed in the work consistent with ecological wisdom? How do our metaphors of the land influence the way we treat it? How is urban nature contrasted with rural or wild nature? What are the links between gender and landscape? How does your attitude, you the reader, how does your attitude toward environmental crisis or deep ecology inform your reading? What exactly is meant by the word nature, and where do you find nature? Where is it? So we come to the end of our lecture. I do hope that you benefited a lot from this short lecture.